Welcome back to Dear Future, where we dive deep into the minds shaping tomorrow's creativity and technology landscapes. I am Suki, coming to you from LA alongside the incredible team at Echo Bend. Today, we're venturing into the realms of experimental filmmaking and the cutting-edge visual storytelling of Paul Trillo, a visionary multidisciplinary artist, writer, director, all-around creative spirit whose work not only captivates the eye, but also challenges my perceptions of reality and time. He is no stranger to breaking new ground as the mastermind behind the world's first fully mobile bullet time camera rig, and has choreographed breathtaking aerial smoke shows using drones. His passion for pioneering new techniques has translated into an amazing portfolio that spans narrative films, music videos, commercials, and he's earned no less than 18 Vimeo staff picks, 19 Vimeo staff picks, and accolades from some of the most prestigious media outlets and organizations, including Rolling Stone, The New Yorker, D&AD. But Paul's journey doesn't stop at visual spectacle, though he might have a different word for the term. His explorations into the possibilities of AI filmmaking have not only gone viral, but have inspired a whole generation to push the digital envelope further. With a commercial repertoire that includes giants like Microsoft, T-Mobile, IBM, even directing a Super Bowl commercial for Carvana, Paul's influence extends far beyond the experimental film scene. As we sit down with Paul today, we'll peel back hopefully a few of the layers behind his creative process, uncover some of the inspiration behind his most groundbreaking work, and get a glimpse into the future of filmmaking through his eyes. So, whether you're a film buff, a tech enthusiast, or simply in love with the art of storytelling, this is going to be a treat.
This idea that everything's been done before can be challenged.
I've been dreaming of a computer like this my whole life.
It really made me think more about how our brains work.
It's not coming from anywhere else. It's only coming from us.
Dear Future.
Paul, welcome to Dear Future. Let's dive into the world you have crafted one frame at a time.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you. That was quite the intro. I appreciate that.
Did I miss anything?
Yeah, like the bad stuff, getting in trouble as a kid. And
That's actually where we're going to go next.
Are we?
So we've had the sort of the greatest hits reel. And
Okay.
now I want to get in a little bit to growing up, your upbringing. Where do you come from? And what were your first encounters with technology?
So I grew up in Marin County in Northern California, Bay Area, and grew up pretty close in proximity to Skywalker Ranch and ILM. And I think that kind of influenced me from an early age. My neighbor was an architect for the Star Wars films, so he did the blueprint drawings for that, and I got to see that as a kid. And he's literally the architect for the Death Star. So that really was inspiring. Seeing Star Wars, like any filmmaker at a young age, was very influential, but also to be able to see props and models and stuff from that in person was really inspiring. And, you know, I got a video camera at a young age and I took my Star Wars toys and was like flying the camera through them and doing stop motion at a really young age, but also thought I was going to be like a Disney animator when I was younger, or some sort of animator. So I was drawing and painting since I was very, very young. And I think maybe some of that still is in me today. But yeah, and then I think I really started to nerd out on stuff when I figured out how to start to make my own video games, like 2D side-scrolling video games where I did the sprite sheets, the artwork and stuff, like pixel by pixel. And that kind of then led to like getting into After Effects in high school and doing tons of stupid videos in high school.
Like what?
We thought we were going to we almost had like a public access TV show in high school that was somewhere between like Tom Green, Jackass, and like Tim and Eric, but kind of pre-Tim and Eric. So it had, you know, man on the street stuff and weird, dumb pranks, like bad street magician stuff.
Were you the
Bad
magician?
Yeah. So I was like intentionally doing bad magic with like to people on the street and, you know, like dropping my cards like all over the sidewalk and having to like have them watch me pick them up and just like trolling people, getting on the PA systems at like a Sears and just making gibberish announcements.
So the trickster spirit was always within you.
I've just suppressed it. I don't. It's still there, but yeah, it's been with me for a while. Yeah.
Okay, so you're in high school, you're making these ridiculous videos, you're trolling people on the street, and then what happens? What made you decide, like, this is what I want to do for my future and not just, like, a fun
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate that I went to Sir Francis Drake High School. Junior year, they split it up into academies, and I joined the Film Video Performance Academy, and we had access to like green screen stage, recording booths like this, tons of cameras and editing gear. And I don't know, I was like obsessed. I was staying after school. We were making things outside of our school projects. And it was like an obsession. It was like the only thing every hour we were making things. I don't know. I guess I didn't consider myself still a filmmaker at that point. You know, I didn't really understand that was the main drive in me, was like story, because I was still doing drawing and painting, and I was applying to schools as a drawing and painting major. And I was looking back at my paintings and realizing that they're all like narrative, which I think can be kind of cheesy. Like they're overly like telegraphed ideas within, you know, high school art stuff. So I applied to California College of the Arts as a drawing and painting major and illustration, and quickly realized I'm not like up to snuff for that compared to like the other like real artists there. So I pivoted within the first couple months into the Film Video Media Arts Academy, or a major that was a lot more experimental than I thought it was going to be. So narrative filmmaking was not their priority there.
It's so interesting too, because I started in purely analog world. Like I was 35 millimeter cameras, and then I moved to 16 mil. And I think the first thing I ever edited was literally by hand cutting negatives and taping them together.
Totally. Yeah. We had to do that too.
Yeah. And you sort of experience the weight and the responsibility of like getting a shot. Like it's not just a shot, it's like precious time and like metering and everything.
High stakes.
Super high stakes. And then there's also projects you make on the side, which is like the camcorder shit that you make, you know, in the side with your friends.
Sure.
Just like handheld, shaky, whatever it is that you want to make that feels almost throwaway. And I guess one of the things that I see in your work, and I've always really enjoyed, is there's like a kind of casual playfulness mixed with a lot of deep intention. What does that balance look like as you're creating? Like, are you very intentional about what you're making and then loose on the inside? You know, like how does that work on a day-to-day creative level?
I think it's constantly keeping yourself open to new ideas. Leaving that kind of buffer room of play is super important, at least to my process. To be rigid in your process, and part of that rigidity is there's like a gooey aspect in there. There's like a lot of structure, but like in there is like things are kind of binding together with gum, and so there's play.
And duct tape.
Yeah, you know, it's like imagine you have concrete rules, but then those things can shift around a little bit, leaving some room so that you're not thinking this is the idea and we have to stick to this idea. Always keeping yourself open to the fact that the film can be better and better and better, and you have to like get out of what you originally intended to make and just kind of lean into the way the project's organically becoming. It's like this combination of doing really technical stuff combined with wanting to do comedy at the same time. And what is that highly technical part of my brain? How does that talk to the part that is absurd and doesn't make sense? And so I try to find ideas that can organically like combine those things together.
So let's talk about some of the things you've made with that creative orientation. What are some of the things you've made over the course of your career, starting from that sort of college age to now? Let's say before AI.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Paul's work before AI. How did that orientation actually play into real projects? What did you make that had that kind of instinct or that balancing act, and how did you do it?
I think the most successful project out of college was this very dumb video. It was called Disaster Series, and it was just my friend Noah dying like Kenny from South Park in different absurd ways, you know, where he'd fall through a manhole cover, or like a giant printer would fall out of a window and hit him in the face, or the Best Buy sign would collapse and kill him. After Effects.
A lot of death.
But, you know, the funnest way to die. But it was all like kind of handheld and looked like sort of found footagey. We were just messing around. We were like teaching ourselves After Effects and ways to do like somewhat believable compositing and deaths. It might have even been, I don't even know if we uploaded it to YouTube. This was like 2006. So we uploaded it to that, but there's another website called like iVideos.
I remember that.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
And that was connected somehow to VH1, and they had some show that was about the internet or something, and we actually like won like best viral video on that show. And
God, you were viral before viral was
totally, before YouTube virality like existed. It was trippy, but encouraging too, to be like, oh, there's an audience outside of film festivals and theaters or whatever. It was just so early in the days of the internet video. So that was encouraging. And then Vimeo started to become a thing right outside of college and just started to just upload stuff to Vimeo because it seemed like better quality than YouTube, and had a short film. It was like a 48-hour film festival project, which you're familiar with, that I uploaded to Vimeo, and that got staff picked, and that was like weird for me because I was like, why would someone want to watch this? But then you're like, realize there are other people out there
who have brains like yours.
Yeah, that want to, that are interested in what you're making. And that was like, really encouraging. So I think I started to tailor my work towards the internet and found ways to combine technique with storytelling. So trying to find a purpose for why you're using a specific technique or technology or effect or whatever it is, like have that be reflected in the meaning of the piece itself. And so I was like looking for music video ideas where it was this kind of form and function sort of working together. And I had a few different staff picks that kept me kind of to be like, okay, I think I can kind of like none of my stuff's like mega viral, but it was like enough to get attention on like Gizmodo and stuff like that, where I was like, okay, I can kind of work the internet a little bit. I know like the formula to some degree of like what would make a good headline. Not that that was driving my work, but it like gave me new ideas, or it rewired my brain a little bit on how to think about projects.
It's like a new limitation. Like these are this is
I gave myself a lot of constraints, and what art school taught me was like to give yourself rules or whatever, and to like bend those rules as much as you can. But like I think as soon as you have rules, the audience can understand what you're doing. As soon as you are breaking your own rules too fast in something, you lose the audience, or people are like, what are they trying to say? Or so I think the rules, going back to like the rigidity thing, it kind of gives you a little bit of like a fallback or a way to justify, your decision making. So you can kind of argue like, oh, I made this decision because of this rule, but also like still leaving that room for flexibility and weirdness and things to happen. And then you mentioned like the bullet time rig thing. So that was like when I really started to realize technology can create visuals that we haven't seen before. So Nokia had sponsored a short film of mine called A Truncated Story of Infinity. And that was my first kind of foray of combining storytelling and visual effects to a much greater degree. And it was about the multiverse, but this was like 2012.
Before the multiverse was cool?
I think before it was cool. I mean, I was still reading books about it, but it was not pop culture to the same degree that it is now, or it's a little bit trite. Yeah, it's a little bit overdone. So I did that. Then Nokia came back to me and they're like, what could you do with 50 cell phones? And I was like, well, we could make like this bullet time rig. But what's interesting about mobile phones is they're mobile, and bullet time is, has been kind of limited to studios, or they all have to be wired together with Ethernet cables, and it's a huge setup. You can't like move this thing. If you've ever done bullet time, it's a massive setup. So it's like once you have the shot, that's the shot, and then you can't do anything more. So I was like, well, now we have high quality cameras the size of like business cards. What if we made a rig that we could wheel around New York and like do street photography, but in bullet time? And so over a week, we made this giant rainbow rig, we called it. It was like a big arch that was maybe like 12 feet wide, semicircle. And we put an array of these 50 Nokia phones with like a weird Stargate, like a podunk, like trailer trash Stargate, like portal thing. It was like with like wires and batteries hanging around it. It looked totally shitty, but
like a discount portal.
Yeah.
Dollar store portal.
Yeah. It's like a portal you'd find like in the back of a thrift store or something.
Totally. Like some dude's portal to
yeah.
But it's like forgotten in a thrift store.
It looked totally insane, but it was so insane that it was like disarming even to like police, who we were like not technically allowed to do this unpermitted, but even police were like getting their multiple photographs taken because it's 50 all at once. We had to make an app for that on the Windows platform that like had all 50 of these phones talking to each other and saying, okay, let's take a photo, everyone ready, 3, 2, 1, and then all 50 cameras would fire at the same time, and then we could sequence that, kind of like a stop motion sequence where you get this frozen time effect. Far before nerfs and even photogrammetry was not really that great at the time.
Yeah.
That was like a pretty successful project, and that really opened me up to being like, okay, new technologies, new kinds of cameras can lend themselves to new techniques, so that this idea that everything's been done before can be challenged because of new technology. And
I just want to go really quickly to the moment where you found AI and why that discovery, why that engagement with artificial intelligence became so fascinating to you and why you dove in so intensely.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I first got interested in AI. To me, it wasn't really a departure from what I was doing because I was just experimenting with everything. And 2016, Google released their deep dreaming, sort of psychedelic, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, hairy dog frog type of computer vision.
Also, what a weird string of keywords.
Yeah. You could use that as like the soundbite to promote this. But it was gnarly looking, but fascinating and had a lot of aesthetic limitations. But I thought it was really interesting that you could synthetically create images that didn't require 3D rendering or anything like that. I played around with it, but I found that it was like limiting aesthetically a little bit where I couldn't put my touch on it. And so I kind of just kept tabs on AI stuff, noticing it getting better, the GAN models. And I played a little bit with GAN stuff and being able to like morph landscapes together and things like that was fun, but I still wasn't really ready for prime time. And then I saw the DALL-E demo where that video that shows, the astronaut riding a horse on the moon and all that cute stuff, which was fascinating, but what really caught my eye was when they were erasing the head of a monkey and like putting different hats on it. It was like casting shadows onto the monkey and it was matching somewhat the lighting of the original shot. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, this is a visual effects tool and this is going to change the way we approach visual effects. I didn't know to like what degree it was going to really affect all of filmmaking potentially, but I knew right off the bat, I was like, this is a visual effects tool that actually can even be used as is. And so I started to look for use cases where you could apply this to visual effects moments. And so I just started playing around. I did this thing. I was recreating a shot from the Infinity film where a bunch of objects change in the palm of someone's hand. I was like, oh, I wonder if the palm of the hand, instead of doing it in stop motion like we did, what if it was just empty? I just like tell AI to fill in the blanks. And so I frame by frame uploaded this video of my hand opening to DALL-E and erased it frame by frame, downloaded the images and was like pretty shocked by how well it matched the lighting direction and the shadows and the compositing, and the objects felt somewhat believable. And I did it so fast too. That was the thing where I was like, okay, this is entirely different way of thinking about filmmaking that is going to open up a lot of possibilities for people that don't have tons of resources. And so I just kept experimenting with replacing objects within my own video footage to show that AI doesn't have to be used as a tool to just copy other people's work, but you can actually augment your own work and you can retain your vision through AI. And I think that's really been what I've been trying to shift the conversation to is that if you have a strong enough vision, it can be retained through this process. And it's important to have your own voice and aesthetic because things are going to get increasingly homogenous, that the more you have your own specific point of view, your own aesthetic, the more you're actually going to stand out as an artist.
I want to get into the philosophical stuff.
Sure.
And I also think that one of my favorite things about talking with you is hearing like how you're using it, like really how you're thinking about stacking tools, building workflows, even seeing the little bits from like lending my camera and seeing what you do with it to, oh, then I take this tool and create this background, and like all of the ways that you consider this tool stacking with other tools and building these kind of like woven relationships between technologies. How are you using AI tools and how are you getting them to talk to each other?
I've always been obsessed with process and steps and creating custom workflows per project. And so that was not foreign to me. So early on, I was combining some of the DALL-E stuff, running that through Runway to do frame interpolation, using Runway to like do green screen isolation, to use their machine learning to like kind of select objects. So I was already combining some different AI tools there and showing people that. But I kind of took it to the next level with this project called Absolve, which we shot at the Louvre last year, which was just kind of a crazy dream project that I didn't think was real until we actually stepped foot inside the Louvre that morning. That was a total surreal experience. We had the Louvre not fully to ourselves. There was like some old people wandering around, but it was on an off day. Yeah, and we just shot a bunch of crap. I mean, I had storyboarded it, actually, going back to drawing and painting. I storyboarded it all by hand and knew that there was going to be this teardrop that comes off of this guy's cheek and then becomes this kind of blob-like water monster that ruins all of historical artwork within the Louvre. And I thought it was kind of funny to use AI to destroy historical artwork.
Very ironic.
Yeah, I guess just to be a little bit
apropos.
Intentionally provocative there, but in a tongue-in-cheek way.
So wait, so really quickly, just to be very specific here, because I think it's so important, the amount of time and energy you put into building out this workflow of like, what's the discipline and what's the looseness?
Yeah.
You created these frames, drew them, created sort of the storyboard of what you wanted the video to be,
Sure.
which I saw, and it looks very similar to what the final video is,
Thanks.
you know? But you also said you kind of went and sprayed it down and sort of like had so many shots of so many things within the space. What did that look like on the day? Were you sort of prescriptive about how you shot?
Yeah, I mean, we had a Steadicam B unit that I was just like, okay, just grab as much artwork and move through the museum as possible so we can have these kind of moments to intercut. And then there was even a couple last minute things. I captured NERFs on my phone. Even as we were getting kicked out of the museum, I was still like grabbing NERFs of scenes just to be safe. So there was room there. But I think all the storytelling moments and the moments with Jacques, who's the artist that made this whole thing happen, were always there from the beginning. It was just the final look or the approach to how it would be done was kind of for figuring out in post and leaving some room of flexibility, but trying to use, I guess, grossness of AI too. So I knew that AI can make the aberrations, the kind of strangeness of AI can have this beauty to it that I wanted to exploit. So I knew that I could make the paintings look gnarly. I just didn't know how to do it exactly. And that was like a process of discovery.
So you shot it. You get kicked out while you
yeah.
And then what happens?
And then I sit on the footage for like a couple months and I'm scared to like open it up. There's no music to edit to really. So that was also a challenge. It was kind of a weird chicken and egg thing where we didn't have a song to work with, but it was supposed to be a kind of a music video, even though the track was scored to the images. Anyways, I start to like rough things out. And then once I have like a shot, I'm still using After Effects to kind of like isolate, mask a region and use other kind of visual effects tools to kind of like distort and warp, transform the image.
Like what? Do you mind saying?
I don't know, just different like Red Giant plugins.
That's helpful. Yeah, just like, okay, so
like
you have a plugin in After Effects
Warp
in your
Bubble or something like that. Warp Bubble 2, I think, to be specific. And
great movie.
Yeah, exactly. One of the best sequels.
Incredible. Never been made before.
Yeah. RGB distortion. Other things to kind of create this water effect. Just a hint at what the AI should be doing. So we did this image-to-image process, which I also used on this GoFundMe project as well. So I had been comfortable with running Stable Diffusion through Automatic 1111 is the customizable tool. It's like the most customizable way of using a Stable Diffusion, at least at the moment it was before Comfy UI, and would kind of rough in a really crappy water blob that like kind of floats through the scene. It looks like a student film kind of style, but I was like, well, how like crude can you be?
Yeah.
And then let the AI kind of do the rendering. So I kind of mapped out the motion. I would like animate the mask. So the blob needs to kind of like grow here and then float over here. So the motions is designed by hand by me for the most part until later. And then I would isolate with a mask, just tell the AI, okay, only affect this region of the shot. And then I would just put in a bunch of crazy words like iridescent, mother of pearl, like blob, like melting, horrific.
Globular.
Yeah, blobular, gross, grotesque, nasty, melting skin, screaming faces, things like that, and Renaissance paintings.
Grotesque
Baroque.
faces, Renaissance.
Yeah, exactly. Comma, Renaissance.
Horror, but make it old.
Yeah, exactly. Just tried a bunch of different things and it would skin the kind of crude After Effects render. It would skin just that portion of it and essentially it would use it as like a render engine, right? So like in 3D, you'd have a crude view of the scene, right? Where the textures are not really fully rendered, or if you have grass, you only see some of the grass and then you run it through a render engine and it fully does the lighting and shadows and all that stuff. I think AI can be used as a render engine to get way more experimental results. I was creating this texture for this water blob and the melting paintings that I could have never kind of created in 3D because of the look and the complexity of it. And then, I would take that, I would run the frames through Runway again to kind of do this frame interpolation to give it this kind of morphy look, use their kind of green screen tool to do it. And then I would bring it back into After Effects and do other kind of compositing to kind of make the lighting of the scene kind of reflect back onto the blob. And then we also printed the whole thing to 16 millimeter at the end. So it kind of gives it this filmic glaze or glue on top of color correcting it. So we just traditional compositing to make those elements work. I was using like, if you know, liquify in Photoshop, there's like a liquify in After Effects. So I was like kind of smearing them and then running those through and saying like melting faces, horrific, like skin melting off bodies, kind of screaming faces, horror painting, stuff like that. And I guess it's all this technical talk to say like there are ways of achieving techniques, effects that we couldn't have done before. And so it actually allows your brain to rethink like what is possible and allows your brain to dream a little bit bigger, I think.
You've had this very extensive journey where you're exploring art from a very traditional sort of background, right? You came in drawing and painting, really thinking about like fine art as the foundation and tradition, and then moving into cinema. And from cinema and like sort of early internet video sort of transformation of like social video, basically the foundations of social video. And now we're sort of in this new era where, myself included, we're sort of having to think about what are use cases that haven't existed before. Because now, while we are using tools to innovate, everyone else is also getting access to the same tools. And not only is there more content now than ever made by people who are not traditional filmmakers, there will also continue to be even more proliferation of just stuff. The first prong is, how are you thinking about it from a technical innovation standpoint? Because one of the things I always hear when we're talking is like, I haven't seen that before, or I have seen that before. And so you're constantly thinking about the innovative branch of the things you're making, which I think is super unique and helpful. And the second thing is philosophically, how are you thinking about that as like the creative spirit?
Yeah, I think specifically with AI, it has been this kind of parallel of, oh, this can achieve this effect or idea a lot easier and potentially could replace traditional ways of doing things, which has its place because visual effects and animation are super tedious and they're
Take a lot of people.
Yeah, it take a lot of people and time. And because of that, certain filmmakers that are still up and coming don't get those opportunities. And so that's exciting for them. For me, the exciting stuff is now this technology is lending itself to aesthetics and techniques that weren't possible before or would have taken months and months of exploration to like land on some like bizarre idea. Because of the sort of chaotic randomness of AI, even as it gets better, there's still like that weird wild card aspect of it. And I think that wild card aspect of it is what makes it fun.
So how are you harnessing that in your work right now, like today, what you're working on this week? And as much as you are at liberty to talk about it, I'd love to hear how you're taking that like wild card that I haven't seen. How can I roll the dice in a new and interesting way? What are you doing with that today?
Well, I just did this project called Notes to My Future Self. That project came out of there. I guess there is a bit of a wildcard aspect built into it where it's very much a video art piece. It's not like a narrative film. It's not really meant to be experienced. It's sort of linear, but not really. It's a bunch of people looking as if they're about to fall asleep and they're proclaiming what they're going to do tomorrow. And they're in these kind of surreal, slightly futuristic, slightly prehistoric landscapes all at night. And it's moody and dark. And cinematic and maybe slightly unsettling and surreal.
It's like depressing solar punk.
Solar punk. What is solar punk?
It's like post-apocalyptic, but like when nature takes over after the machine revolution.
Right. Yes.
So it's like nature and technology. So
Totally.
It's kind of like machine plus nature.
Yeah. So there is a lot of nature elements to it, but then there's these kind of like LED portals in these sort of theatrical environments.
Yeah, they're kind of like a stage.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Which is in the prompting. I wanted to, I guess, acknowledge the sort of false aspect of AI images rather than to, I guess, trick people. But I had this kind of series of prompts that was like, theatrical lighting, moody, forest, gnarled roots, tree branches, rock sculptures, whatever, blue light. Neon, yeah. But then there...
And this was in Stable Diffusion? This was in...
Stable Diffusion. So it started in Automatic 1111. I was using some cinematic custom preset models. So it also helped, I think, make it have that kind of texture that felt more photographic than fully like synthetic. A lot of AI images feel somewhere between paintings and photography because I think
like illustrations.
I think the data set literally is merging photo of a frog and a painting of a frog to have its understanding of what a frog is.
Right.
And so then this aesthetic gets a little muddled in between there. It's like a Lisa Frank, sort of aesthetic that I'm not super into, to be honest.
You don't love Lisa Frank? You don't want to make folders?
I do love Lisa
childhood
Frank, but I
binders?
want Lisa Frank to just do that. And I don't want everything to look like Lisa Frank.
Yeah, you want Lisa Frank to stay on her binders.
Yeah, exactly. She can do like shirts and like pencils and stuff too.
So you were using Automatic 1111 and cinematic presets that you made or that you got from other people?
That I stole, yeah.
Right. As long as you're acknowledging it.
Yeah.
But it's helpful for people to know, like, oh, you found those.
I'm forgetting it's like one of the Stable Diffusion XL models, like cinematic alpha. I don't know.
Great. So you found it on Reddit. You did research. You brought it in and you created, it's kind of like an AI LUT.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
interesting.
kind of. Yeah, it's like a preset LUT.
Yeah.
So I had this preset of words and it was placing people in these like kind of extreme wide landscapes. But I guess the chaotic or the like that room of flexibility is I was literally taking the dialogue from the script. So it was like, tomorrow I'm going to clean out my closet or whatever it is, or tomorrow I'm going to call my mom.
Which you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote the script. I use AI to clean up my writing, but I don't let it drive the creative process because it's still pretty unimaginative. It functions on cliche, which is, whatever.
Great phrase.
Yeah.
It's a great phrase. Yeah.
Which, I don't know, I guess can be super helpful because it can standardize something. If you're writing something and it just makes no sense, it can kind of help give cohesiveness to a bunch of ramblings.
And dad jokes.
It excels at dad jokes. It hasn't become like subversive yet.
No.
And I think some of the humor in the script I wrote is a little bit subversive. I did it for this exhibition in Madrid, this video art exhibition, and the prompt they gave us was optimistic future, which I don't know if I quite delivered on it, but in a subversive way, maybe I did, where I have these people sort of being overly optimistic about what they're going to do tomorrow. The future starts with tomorrow, so it's quite literal like interpretation of that. And so all these phrases of tomorrow, I'm going to forgive all the people I forgot to forgive or whatever it is. I use those words at the beginning of the prompt just to, I don't know, every word affects the DNA of AI generated image. So I thought it'd be interesting conceptually if we're trying to like manifest the realities around us and our words kind of create the realities subconsciously, we start to change our decisions based on the things we say or the things we tell others we're going to do, resolutions. What if these people that are in this kind of like liminal space between today and tomorrow and they're imagining what they're going to do tomorrow, they're dreaming up what the world looks like around them. And so I'm using the dialogue from the scenes as the beginning of each prompt. So it was a little bit conceptual, I guess, in that way. But it created some like weird things that if I deleted that part of the dialogue from the prompt, it felt more random or something. And so it did affect it in really subtle ways, but it was interesting. And
poetically.
It was clearly like a poetic use of it. But yeah, I liked that using AI to like give it room to interpret, to
stretch its little wings out.
Yeah. To be like, what do you think of this? If I say some weird shit to you, like, how are you going to like take that?
Bro. Yeah.
And it always does. It's like relentlessly helpful.
Well, so something I found when I was doing that, my first video was just an exercise in this. Because I was like, how creative is this AI actually? So I took lines from this Mary Oliver poem and I fed the entire video. It's called An AI Dreams of Dogfish. And I took this poem by Mary Oliver called Dogfish and I fed only the lines of the poem as the introduction. And then I used a bunch of keywords of what I wanted it to look like and feel like.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah, that's
And I
cool.
did this last year.
Amazing.
And so my experience of doing it was very mixed because there's some lines that are deeply conceptual and I realized it didn't understand what I was saying. For you, did it sort of feel like it was automatic or did you have to do a little bit of like massaging to get the result?
I think using negative prompting and stuff like that helped kind of guide the AI still. Takes a few re-rolls and stuff, but you're given infinite options, which was not an option as a filmmaker before.
This is actually so important for me and so many other people.
Yeah.
I think I was on this last 48-hour film challenge. What was so interesting was that the problem was our indecision.
Yeah.
The challenge was the lack of understanding of how to be decisive, when to be decisive, at what point do you stop rolling. What thought process do you go through when you're deciding and discerning which of these images do I choose? How did you do that on this project?
Listening to yourself and restraint is like more important than ever, I think, when you're using these AI tools. Directing traditional stuff has fine-tuned my own ability to listen to my gut. If you feel any hesitation about, you're like, just cut it. And it's like, you have to be able to like kill your babies or whatever. And there's almost like a FOMO in AI of like, if I keep digging through the data, maybe there's like something even more fucking awesome. And so you have to like, I don't know, you have to just like listen to your gut. And I think that project, My Future Self, was about restraint and how much I can apply restraint and be minimalistic and just, try to not overflex.
We're sort of coming to the end. And I want you to spend the next 5 minutes sort of like waxing poetic of the things that you want people to understand and know about, things I didn't ask.
Yeah, great. Just, free range.
And like venting. Too. Like, what's on your mind? What's been coming up as you've been making work? Whatever it is that you want to talk about that you're seeing also in the landscape today.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
I think the untrained filmmaker just, has this overambitious mentality. And I think even a lot of the stuff I do is overambitious. I constantly like go back and forth with like trying to impress people and then also just do something that feels honest. And they don't always intersect. The issue with like all these, whatever, quote unquote AI filmmakers is that they are quote unquote AI filmmakers and they're watching like tutorials on like how to do the AI animation stuff, and they're not watching like tutorials on like how to actually make a good story or film. And I just fear in the future, and not just filmmaking, but really like all sorts of forms of art, that there's going to be an over reliance of using these things as a crutch. Craft is going to be sort of relegated to computers, and we're not going to have the discipline and time to teach ourselves craft anymore. What's going to stop them from like learning discipline or learning things the hard way, whether it's writing or playing music or taking a photograph or painting? What is going to motivate them? Hopefully good teachers, but at the end of the day, the internet is always there. And so I just really hope that craft doesn't get lost in this process and that people still learn the traditional way of doing things, because it's not just about like, back in my day, I had to do things the hard way. It's like, you actually like, that's how you find your voice, right? So like going back to the beginning of our conversation, I like dabbled and played with all these different things, and through like being like, I like comedy and I like doing this dumb comedy stuff, but then I also like making my own video games. That leads to After Effects. The comedy leads to writing and a sort of perspective. And those things start to converge, and you find different interests through exploring and failing and knowing what you're good at and knowing what you like. And if you aren't ever like honing your craft, you never learn to discover your voice. That's my concern for the future, is this homogeny of culture that we're kind of barreling towards.
I went to a birthday party the other day, and there was this tarot card reader lady. They talk about trendy. But one of the things she said was, the cards aren't necessarily there to tell you their future. It's there to give you something to react to. And so in some ways, she was like, if you don't like the cards, then you have the ability to say, this is unacceptable and I'm going to choose something different. And so I think it's really important right now to talk about the things we don't want to see so that we can decide for ourselves what we're going to do to avoid that undesired future.
Yeah.
Right. And I think some people are sort of like, no, keep the rose-colored glasses on. And of course, there's going to be a sort of reactivity on the other side, which we're experiencing right now. Of like techno-optimism has necessarily led to a reaction from the public that like, no, this is scary. We have to be careful.
Yeah.
But as someone who is innovating in the field, pushing this envelope in film, I'm sure you get so much resistance from people online being like, this is terrible. And you're like, bro, I'm out here as a filmmaker, as a director, not just trying to lean on these tools as a crutch, but really use them as a part of my creative process. For you, what is the future you want to move towards? And understanding that this is a potential future. It's a dismal future.
Yeah.
What would be your approach to designing a future you actually like?
Yeah, I mean, the future, it's really, I guess, I am in this like sort of precarious position of alienating some people, but also gaining a lot of attention. And it's exciting for that reason. And I think what I'm trying to do is to show the importance of your having a voice and having a perspective and not showing that this is easier, that this is giving us opportunity to explore stories that hadn't been explored before or couldn't have been explored before. So it's really, showing people the way that like you still have to like try hard. You can't just like phone it in. And I don't know. I don't really know how to like affect things larger than, the audience I have. But I think that maybe things will naturally sort themselves out. We're going to be inundated with content, and it's going to be like funny and shareable for a period of time. And then that kind of allure or that shininess starts to kind of wear down, and the polish starts to become a little more matte, and we aren't going to be just like, oh, this is AI, let's just like look at it because it's AI. Because everyone has these tools, it hopefully it's like the good ideas will kind of rise to the top. So maybe it'll naturally sort itself out, but there's going to be a lot more noise. And I guess if someone's like happens to be listening to this and they get into filmmaking just through the AI tools, I would just encourage people to like pause for a second and learn the other disciplines, and also still pick up cameras and realize that filmmaking is a lot more than just like a slow motion, like rotational shot around something with like someone with a glazed expression looking up to the sky. There's like a lot more to filmmaking, believe it or not, than just that. If like go watch a movie is my advice. Like go watch a boring movie that's amazing and like learn how much like nuance is in filmmaking. It's like also why I'm not that scared of things like Sora, because there is so many decisions and so much specificity needed to really tell like an impactful story, that it can give the illusion that something's working, but in practice you realize how detailed storytelling filmmaking is. So I encourage people to like go back to basics whenever they can, and that will inform like what they're saying.
And for filmmakers, for people who have been in the industry, let's say, who really understand. Someone told me at a party the other night, which I really liked, who like understand what happens between two people. He said something which was like, I know the importance of what passes between two people in a room, and being able to just witness that.
Yeah.
And for people who are in that world, who don't feel that they need AI to be able to tell these impactful stories, like what would be the advice you would give to them from this perspective that you're standing in?
Well, if someone doesn't want to use AI, that's totally up to them. I guess I would just say that if you are a traditional filmmaker and you don't know quite how to use it, or you're scared of it, or you're scared of like alienating people, I think just realize that there's like no better time than now to like be a creative. And so still do things how you think they should be done, or how you think they should work, but also realize that the types of stories that can be told now, or who you need to rely on, the gatekeepers of the stories that you want to tell, may not be as important in the future. And so I guess that's the sort of techno-optimist side talking to those people. That answers your question or
not? It does.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Yeah. I think it's just like something to hold on to. Yeah. And people are like, what do I do?
Yeah, I think, you now have the ability to be a little more independent, I think, or you will have the ability to be more independent. And that's really exciting, because now we can take like bigger swings and make bolder decisions. So it still applies to people, even if they're scared of it. Like there are ways that they can also be like liberated by it without having to cut out actors or whatever.
This is great.
Cool. All right. We did it.
Paul, it's been an absolute delight to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for showing us how you're taking big swings and how you integrate your technical acuity to create really unique stories.
Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
We hope this episode sparks your curiosity and encourages you to experiment, to innovate, and maybe even disrupt the status quo of your own creative projects. Paul's journey, I think, is a reminder that in the realm of creativity and AI, the only limit is our imagination. As we sign off, please remember that the intersection of AI and art is not just about the tech we use, but how we use it to reflect, challenge, and expand our understanding of the world around us. I hope that you carry forward the spirit of innovation and curiosity that Paul embodies, bidding you farewell for now, but always eager to embark on the next adventure. Please keep pushing boundaries, and who knows what you'll discover next. See you in the next episode, and maybe in the future.
Dear Future.